cell phones into the classroom. I don't have the answers to everything. I'm not the sage on the stage. Well, I'm on the stage anyway, right? But that I thoroughly encourage the students to, if they have a question, if they're not understanding something, I am somebody who may be right next to them, who may be in the next room, who may be in another time zone. Get some answers, feed it back in class. So that we do have an interchange of ideas that's not rigorously down there in the syllabus and the lesson plan. We also have our students participate in the creation of the syllabus quite often so that they become active, involved, learner-centric people.
Can you give us some more specifics, the development of the syllabus, for example? I mean, I think a bias might be, you know, okay, the first 3 weeks we're going to take off, and then the 4th week we're going to watch a movie. And I know that's not actually what happens. How do you structure that? How long does that take to actually have
I have to say, working at, and this is true on the high school work I've done as well as at the university level, both undergrad and grad, that's never happened.
Right.
There may be a time in the middle of the semester where they wish they didn't set as high a goals as they did, but that in fact what we do is we're saying, here's the overall goals of the class that I think we should be moving towards. What's missing? What things have you already learned? I understand that there's state standards and we have to operate within inside of them, but that what is it that you're learning and how does it apply to what you're doing right now? Okay, so can we create exercises using this, as opposed to me giving you some footage to edit or me sending you out to shoot some stuff of our needs. What are the kinds of things that you've already done? How can you build on them? So that they're creating exercises. I have the power to say no, because I have a responsibility to the people who sign my checks. But that my ultimate responsibility is to make sure that they take away something. So I'm asking them for project-based material. I'm asking them for overall guidance in terms of goals within our set.
Now, I know you're talking about university faculty. Let me ask the panel, do you all think this would work in other areas and in K-12?
Can I just give an example?
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times when we think of our kids, first of all, one of the problems about the way that we approach education is that we tend to think, and I have this discussion with Achieve all the time. I'm on the advisory board. Our state's involved as one of the Achieve states. And I raise this up all the time because when they talk about assessment, they're going to assess learning. But they only do assessment, and the state only does assessment, of what takes place in the classroom, as if learning and what takes place in the classroom is the same thing. We know that there's some learning that takes place in the classroom.
We hope.
We hope. But the reality of it is kids learn through everything they do. We know it. We experience it. Cognitive psychologists talk about it. And yet we make the mistake of thinking, one, that learning and teaching are synonymous, that we as a teacher, if we teach, they learn, which is not necessarily true. That the only place they learn is in the classroom, which is definitely not true. I remember I was in East Harlem, and I actually was working on a project as an advisor at the City University of New York, and the teachers there in East Harlem, they were saying, we can't teach the kids their math tables. They are completely uninspired. They're unmotivated. You can't teach these kids anything. Walk out in front of the school, and there's a whole group of them doing a very complicated rap song and dance with every single step they know. So I bring the teachers out and I said, these are the same kids you can't teach. They seem to be inspired enough to learn every single step, every single word of this song, but you can't teach them the math tables. Maybe it's how we're teaching. Same thing with, with YouTube. Things become viral because they catch the imagination of the kids. We have failed to do that, to attract, to excite, to inspire, to engage, and ultimately for the students to learn. What we've got to be able to do is free learning from this cage of thinking it's only what takes place in the classroom. Of course we teach in the classroom. Of course we do everything we can to help our students learn. But once we can free that, and also free it from a paradigm that says only the teacher knows, the student doesn't.
Bill, can I ask you a question about that? And I'm totally behind this, by the way, but playing devil's advocate on it. But wait, I'm assessed. My class is assessed.
Of course it is.
These
Of course it is. Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
how do you deal with that?
Well,
What kind of real-world assessment should we be going to?
Again, competencies, competency-based learning. You know, if we excite kids and if we give them the tools, and this is where I think digital learning, social networking, many of the applications through serious gaming, they give the students the opportunity to advance. They get immediate feedback. They learn if they did it right. Now, by no means do we want to have all education only through a game. But it's a tremendous way of engaging the students, catching their interest, and learning competencies. You know, how many of you have done flight simulator?
Does that include crashing?
Crashing it, or have gone inside the space shuttle and tried to land it. And by the way, there's several of them in the state. There's one at the museum. There's one at New Mexico State at SEMA. But you can actually have a chance to do it. Kids become fascinated. They actually think, God, I could be an astronaut. And they see themselves in a completely different light, especially when they're successful in landing it.
So let me say something about assessment. You haven't had a chance to speak.
Well, I think the difficult thing with assessment in media programs is that you have to turn, over the course of 4 years in the Creative Media Institute, you're turning the assessment, because it's qualitative assessment, it's not quantitative. There's not, you can't say this is a good film because it meets this particular criteria. It's something that comes from the mind and the heart. So you're turning over the qualitative assessment of their work to the students, because by the time they graduate, if they don't believe that they can make the films, or if they don't believe that they're good, then it doesn't matter if I say it's good and tell my students that that's good, or the rest of the faculty say it's good. If they don't believe that it's good, then it doesn't matter. They won't go out and do it. I mean, because we're talking about making, let me get away from the idea of the term making media. We don't make media. We're not, although I love the name of our institute, the Creative Media Institute, we're actually the Creative Content Institute. We don't make media. Right. We make films, and we put them on DVD, and the DVD is the media. Okay, so we don't really, actually I don't really like the term media all that much. Okay, so, straight there my title.
Just going to scratch.
Yeah, but turning it over to them as to assess their own work is paramount.
Self-assessment's huge in terms of that. It gives them a sense of ownership of their learning. And by the way, I find that this is true the younger you get, that the self-assessment piece is really important.
Can I play devil's advocate on that? And I'd like Merrilea to talk about this as well. I think, again, we have a bias from in the same way we allow students to write their syllabus, in the same way we would allow students to assess themselves. I think we have to think creatively about assessment, that assessment isn't just do I get an A, B, C, or D, but we encourage assessment of, am I competent? What am I not competent in? What does that competency look like? How do I know if I'm competent in that area? And what would I need to do to become more competent?
Well, I don't think that we can abandon our input in there. We need to create the rubrics for self-assessment. We need to really create the framework where that becomes possible for them.
Just if I could just go back just for 1